Good morning, guys. Today we're going to be doing our read aloud of Yucky Worms, written by Vivian French and illustrated by Jessica Alberg. And this is a story out of our hybrid text set. And a hybrid text, if you remember from the beginning of the year when we talked about genres, is a story that is written as kind of a fictional story, but it also teaches you through nonfiction facts. So in this story, you're going to learn a lot of interesting facts about worms, and you're going to be learning that through the story of a little boy in the garden with his grandmother. On the back, it says, "Who would want to be friends with a wiggly, slimy, yucky worm? You can't even tell which end is which. But there's more to these lowly creatures than meets the eye. Find out where worms live, how they move, and why gardeners consider them friends in this humorous and informative look at the unappreciated and fascinating worm." Sorry. Zoe's playing with her bone under there, and it's getting kind of loud. One day, when I was in Grandma's garden, Grandma dug up a slimy, slithery, wiggly worm. "Yuck," I said. "Throw it away." "Throw it away?" Grandma looked horrified. "Would you throw away one of your friends?" "You can't be friends with a worm," I said. "You can't even tell which end is which." "Yes, you can. Watch." Grandma put the worm down. It gave kind of a squirmy wriggle and disappeared really fast, pointy end first. As the rounded end vanished, Grandma said, "There goes its tail." I bent down to look, and I could see it had left a little tunnel. "Where did it go?" I asked. "Home," Grandma said. "It's an earthworm. It lives underground." So in this book, the main print is going to be our story between the grandson and the grandmother. And then along the sides, you'll notice that we have some extra facts here. So up here it says, in most backyards, there will be about 15 worms in every square yard of soil. And then down here, do you remember what kind of text feature this is if it shows us the inside of something? It's a cutaway. So it says, "This is my mouth where food goes in." If you look really closely, you can kind of see that it does look like a mouth. It says esophagus, where the food goes next. Crop, where the worm stores food. Gizzard, where the food is ground down. Intestine, where goodness from the food is absorbed into the bloodstream. And this is its brain, this little blue dot. Worms have 5 pairs of hearts. Clatellum, a pale ring found only on adult worms. Skin covered in mucus for easier wriggling. And this is my bum where poop comes out. Yeah. But what does it eat? Dirt? I wanted to know. It eats tiny, tiny stones and bits of dirt, Grandma told me. But worms eat other things too, like rotting leaves and flowers and fruit and dead insects. They especially like eating at night when it's cool. The stones and dirt help to grind everything up in the worm's stomach, and then the worm poops it back out. So around here we've got some different worms, and they're telling us some things about what they can and can't eat. So up here we have some moldy fruit. It says, moldy. It says, "Dirt is good for you." And then we've got a button right here. It says, "Yuck, can't eat this." Worms come above ground to find things to eat too. Nice and rotten, just how I like it. They pull their food back down as they wriggle into the ground again. So you can see these leaves coming down right over here. And this little worm is sleeping. Grandma pointed at the flower bed. "Look, can you see?" I bent down and I saw what looked like a weird, long, curly worm made of dirt. "That's worm poo," Grandma said. "It's called a cast. You know when you recycle things? Well, worms do it too. There's still a lot of goodness left in the things a worm eats. And when the goodness comes out again as poop, it helps plants to grow big and strong. And as the worms move around under and on top of the soil, the poop gets spread around the garden." So that sounds kind of yucky, but that's how that's fertilizing the soil. So there's still goodness that the worm didn't soak up when it digested it. It poops it back out, and then that gives nutrition to the soil for the plants. Sounds gross, but it's actually kind of cool. That's why worms are my friends. Grandma gave me a thumbs up. And it's not just their poop that's good for plants. The tunnels they dig loosen the soil so roots can stretch out and air and rainwater can get in. So over here, this page is actually written in kind of a neat way, so the words are along the worm tunnels. So it says, worms' poop is so fine and crumbly, it never blocks their tunnels. In a square yard of soil, there will be about 4 yards of earthworm tunnels. So you might be thinking, how's that possible if there's only 1 square yard? It's because they're so wiggly like this. So if it just went straight across, obviously there wouldn't be very much room, but their tunnels go all over. Some people call worms underground farmers. Worms can wriggle backward and forward. So it says, wriggle, wriggle, wriggle. And this one says, oops, forgot something, better reverse. But it's dangerous being a worm, Grandma said. I stared at her. Dangerous? I asked. She smiled at me. Lots and lots of animals think worms make the most delicious dinner. So right here we've got this gopher or a mole, and it says shopping list. Worm, 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 worm. Birds love them, and so do moles, badgers, frogs, hedgehogs, and foxes. Even some slugs eat worms. And human beings accidentally slice through them with spades and spike them with forks. It's a tough life. Cutting them in half doesn't hurt them, Grandma, I said. They just turn into 2 worms and keep on growing. Grandma shook her head. Poor worms. Lots of people think that, but it's not true. She put her fork down. Time for a snack. So then around here, this one says, a worm's tail can regrow if it's cut off, but cutting a worm in half will kill it. Says, I think I'll hide down here. Says, there's a mole over there. Bird alert. That was close. Grandma had tea and I had orange juice. Can I dig up a worm? I asked. If it rains, Grandma said, the worms will come up on their own. I took a cookie. What if it doesn't rain? Grandma winked at me. We'll use the watering can and pretend. I finished my cookie as fast as I could. Can we trick the worms now? It says worms breathe through their skins. They don't mind the soil around them being wet, but if their tunnels are flooded, they come up to the surface to move around more easily. I don't know about you, but I'm really loving this Grandma's garden. I think I might need one like that. Grandma filled the watering can and I watered the ground. Then I stood back. I didn't want any worms chewing at my shoes. They only put their heads out, Grandma promised, and it'll be a while before they do. When it's very hot and the soil gets too dry to slither through, a worm will wriggle down to where the soil is still damp, curl up, and wait for rain. When it's very cold, a worm will wriggle down even deeper, below the frost level, and curl up with other worms for warmth. Grandma was right. I had time to eat 2 more cookies before she said, look! Wow, I said. I could just see the tip of a worm above the ground. Now watch this. Grandma stomped her foot and the worm disappeared. Did it see you? I asked. Grandma shook her head. Worms don't have eyes. They feel vibrations though, and a thump like that might mean a hungry bird is landing. Danger. So if you look closely right here, you can see this worm coming out. And so she said they don't have eyes, and so what she means is when she stomps her foot on the ground and it makes that vibration, kind of like when you walk through your house sometimes, like in our house, we have a pier and beam house, which means it's built up off the ground a little bit, or like if you live in a mobile home, or if you've ever walked through an RV or something like that, when you stomp like that, you can feel the vibrations. That's what the worm is feeling, and that makes it go back down into the ground so that it can hide from any danger. Grandma dug her fork in the ground. Up came lots of dirt and wriggly worms. She picked one up and washed it in the watering can. Mustn't drop it, she said. They can't swim. Grandma put the clean worm on some paper and held it near my ear. I could hear a tiny rustling noise. What's that? They're covered in little bristles, Grandma said. The bristles and their muscles help them move. It says a worm has rigid muscles all along its body. Wow, look at these bristles. To move, it pushes its front end forward and uses its bristles to hold that end in place while the back end catches up. So it moves like this. So it like pulls itself from the front. The bristles on the back end keep the worm from sliding backward, while the front end tunnels forward again into the earth. Away I go. I've got muscles too. I bent my arm so Grandma could see. If you've got so many muscles, she said, maybe you'd like to help me plant my sunflower seedlings? Okay, I agreed, and then I thought of something. When I go to school on Monday, I'm going to say that I've got lots of new friends. Good idea, Grandma said. But, I said, I might not actually say they're worms. It says how to be a wormologist. So this is another thing that makes it a hybrid text. In the back of the book, there's some more information for us. It's not necessarily part of the story, but it's just additional nonfiction information for you. So it says, look for worm casts in your garden or in the park, leaves sticking up out of the ground, or worms on the surface after it rains. You can experiment by watering a dry patch of grass or dirt and waiting to see if worms come up, tapping the ground to see if you can make a worm believe it's raining, carefully digging up a fork full of dirt and counting how many worms you find. And when they say a fork, remember they don't mean like a fork that you eat with. They mean like this big tool right here that Grandma was using. So it's like a dirt fork. It's different. A worm in the hand. When you pick up a worm, remember to be respectful. A worm is a living creature. Check how it feels. Is it smooth? Is it slimy? Can you feel the bristles? Watch how it moves. Is it a youngster or an adult? Remember, adults have a clitellum, a yellow ring around their body. Put the worm back on newly dug soil and watch how it wriggles away. Always wash your hands after touching worms, just because you never really know what they've been digging through. Index. It says, look up the pages to find out about all these wormy things. Don't forget to look at both kinds of word. This kind and this kind. So if you remember in the story, this kind was whenever the grandma was talking with the grandson. This kind of words was the little bitty facts that it gave us throughout. So it gives you an index over here. Remember, an index tells you all of the times or places where those words were mentioned. So like right here, we've got breathing and bristles. So if I wanted to know about how worms breathe, I would look on page 18. And if I wanted to know about bristles, it talks about those on pages 24 and 25. So an index just tells you where to find that information. And then on the back, we've got some worms digging through their tunnels. And that is the end. So hopefully you learned some fun things about worms. Honestly, I just still don't like touching them because they feel gross. I don't like touching worms or frogs or fish or anything like that. But it does hopefully give you a new appreciation for why we do need worms and why you should be respectful to them, because they really are helpful in our soil. It's a really important part of nature. So hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll go watch our reading lesson next so you can know what to do with this book.